Hello my dear children, today we are going to learn about human female reproductive system. We know any system is designed to perform some specific functions. Now let us see what are the different parts of human female reproductive system and what are the specific functions performed by them. Now if you take the total human female reproductive system, it shows two types of organs, primary sex organs and secondary sex organs. Primary sex organs are ovaries. What is a primary sex organ? The organ which produce gametes. Gametes are basic requirement for sexual reproduction. So without gametes, no sexual reproduction. So the organ which forms the gamete is a primary reproductive organ, which is also known as a gonad. Then there are other organs which help in transport of that gamete and also to perform various other functions related to the process of reproduction. So these are all different parts. Now let us see its picture. I will show you an interesting picture. This is a photograph of sagittal section of human female body after death. See, this is the region where you can see all the organs. Say this is uterus, our first shelter, and this is the vagina and different body parts. Different parts associated with the female reproductive system. Now let us draw it diagrammatically. So this one, this is uterus and other organs. This is the lateral view, this is the front view of internal organs. Now another important picture, this is the internal reproductive organs of female, just we have taken them out. Okay, this is uterus. This is the original photograph, a pair of ovaries, fallopian tubes. Here it is a cervix. Right, now let us draw this, or let us represent it as a diagram. It would be like this. Here you can see the primary reproductive organs, a pair of ovaries, and other accessory organs, accessory sex organs, fallopian tubes, a pair, uterus, cervix, vagina, of course external genitalia. These are human female reproductive organs. Now let us take one by one. First we will take primary sex organs, ovaries. There are a pair of ovaries located on either side of the uterus, attached to the wall of the uterus with some mesenteries here, and they are located just below the fallopian tube. Now let us take each ovary and have a sectional view. How it looks like? It looks like this. So when you go for a section, the ovary shows number of structures, these are all called follicles. What is a follicle? The structure which encloses female gamete. Now you see, these are different types of follicles at different stages of development. When the female baby in mother's womb, all these follicles up to this stage, follicles are developed. No need of any, special dose of hormones. At the time of birth, the female baby is having number of follicles called primary follicles, enclosing primary oocyte, okay, which is going to become womb in future. Many primary follicles can be seen. Nearly 5 to 7 lakhs of follicles are there. But most of the follicle disintegrate and very few of them will become mature and release ovum, female gamete. Okay, we'll name all these follicles: primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and corpus luteum, this one, and corpus albicans, corpus luteum and corpus albicans. So there are different types of follicles. Now, if you take the sectional view in a different picture, the ovary is showing two regions. This outer darker area, that is cortex region, and inner lighter color zone called medulla. You will find all these follicles in this cortex region, and this ovary is supplied with a number of blood vessels, nerves. Okay, fine. Now, so this is the section. One of the follicle which is completely mature. It is the original photograph taken from microscope. And what is this? This is a matured follicle enclosing female gamete. Okay. Now, this is another picture showing ovary with different follicles arranged in an order. In previous picture, all the follicles are arranged randomly, but here you can see orderly arrangement. This is the primordial follicle, primary follicles, secondary follicle, okay, then tertiary follicle. This is also tertiary follicle, which is mature tertiary follicle, also known as a Graafian follicle. See, what is the difference between these? It depends on how many layers of cells are there around the primary oocyte. This is the primary oocyte, which is surrounded by a number of layers of cells, follicular cells, and also granulosa cells. You see, here, when the follicle is growing, the size is increasing because of additional layers. Finally, the follicle, a mature follicle, contains secondary oocyte or ovum. Now, this ovum will come out by a process called ovulation. The follicle break down, release the ovum by a process called ovulation. My dear children, this development, see, at the time of birth, the female baby is having this stage. After birth, at a particular age, we attain puberty. At that time, some hormones like a follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, that follicle stimulating hormone released by anterior lobe of pituitary stimulate this follicle to take further growth. It becomes secondary, tertiary under the influence of FSH. Okay, when this follicle ruptures and releases ovum, this rupture and release of ovum is called ovulation. It is under the influence of another pituitary hormone, luteinizing hormone. That means growth of follicle, rupture of follicle to release ovum takes place under the influence of FSH and LH hormone at the time of puberty. Okay, fine. So the same it is shown here, pictures. Now, let us list out all the follicles. Here you see primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, Graafian follicle, corpus luteum, corpus albicans. Okay. Now, these follicles, let us locate. Primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle. This is tertiary follicle, which is mature one called Graafian follicle. Now, this is ruptured follicle. This is a corpus luteum. This is corpus albicans. Right. Here, this is common. But this corpus luteum will be turned into corpus albicans where if this ovum which is released is not fertilized by the sperm. Suppose if it is fertilized by the sperm, this corpus luteum continues to grow in size. If there is no fertilization, it will become reduced, degenerated and remain as a small white mass called corpus albicans. Very good. Now, this growing follicle produces two types of hormones. See, this growing follicle produces estrogen and this corpus luteum produces progesterone. Both estrogen and progesterone are responsible for development of female secondary sexual characters, especially estrogen. Menstruation process, all those are under the control of those hormones. Right, now, here this is a original photograph of primary follicle. You see here, a single layer of granulosa cells. Now, it is original photograph. Now this is the picturized format, right? A single layer of granulosa cells, also known as a follicular epithelium. Coming to secondary follicle, see, instead of one layer there are 2 or 3 layers of follicular cells. This I will show you diagrammatically here. See, many layers of follicular cells. We call them as stratum granulosum. Then another layer is being formed. This is a theca follicular cells. These ones. So another layer is being formed. Apart from the granulosa cells, another layer is formed. Now this is secondary. Now coming to, this is the photograph of tertiary follicle, the original photograph taken from our microscope. See here, many layers. Here the ovum, the secondary oocyte is very specific, and you will find a space inside the follicle. That space is called antrum, and that space is filled with Lecker folliculi. And this ovum or secondary oocyte is attached to the wall of the follicle with the help of a cluster of follicular cells. Here, these cluster of follicular cells is called cumulus oophorus. Okay, so this is the tertiary follicle structure. After that, it becomes matured and ruptures, release the secondary oocyte or ovum, female gamete. This is the structure of tertiary follicle. You see, there are 2 layers, theca externa and theca interna. Externa, interna. Then, what do you call this layer? This is a basal lamina, and these are all granulosa cells. This is a cavity, fluid-filled cavity antrum. This is a cumulus oophorus or oophorus, a cluster of cells which attach secondary oocyte to the follicle. Now it's a tertiary follicle. After some time, under the influence of a luteinizing hormone, it ruptures. Okay, right. Various stages of follicular development. Here you can see primary, secondary, tertiary, follicular, Graafian follicle, then ruptured follicle, then corpus luteum. All the follicles at one place. Now, so ovary releases ovum or secondary oocyte from the follicle. That's all. That is the function of ovary, production of gamete. Now that gamete is to be transported to where? Let us see. See here. Now this ovum has produced gametes, secondary oocyte. That is to be transported up to here. What do you call this one? A pair of fallopian tubes. Now, a pair of fallopian tubes, this uterus, cervix, vagina, external genital organs, all those come under secondary sex organs. Now, what is the role of this fallopian tube? The fallopian tube is showing 3 parts. This is a funnel-shaped infundibulum, and a wider portion, this is called ampulla, and a narrower portion called isthmus. Infundibulum, ampulla, isthmus. And this is the portion where the ampulla and the narrower isthmus are joined. This is a ampullary isthmic junction. Why I am specifically mentioning here, this is the place where fertilization takes place. Union of male and female gamete takes place. That means a female gamete has to move, has to be transported up to here, and male gamete has to travel up to here. That means female gamete shows little movement just from here to here, whereas male gamete has to travel from the entrance of the uterus cervix all the way through uterus, then fallopian tube, reaching ampullary isthmic junction. Okay, so fallopian tubes are meant for receiving ovum. Now, each ovary produces one ovum. For example, this month, this ovary has released one ovum. Next month this ovary will release, like that. Now, how this ovum released here is taken by this fallopian tube. If you observe carefully, the funnel-shaped structure infundibulum has finger-shaped projections called fimbriae. Here you see. The fimbriae will move vigorously and suck the ovum which is released here. Otherwise, the ovum will go somewhere. It will be sucked by the fimbriae of fallopian tube. Finally, you know, inside the fallopian tube there is a ciliary epithelium that will propel the ovum towards this ampullary ischemic junction. By the time, if the sperm happens to reach here, definitely there is a chance of fertilization. That means release of ovum and entry of sperm should be synchronized. Then only there is a chance of fertilization. Okay. Now, fine. Next, what happens and what about this uterus? Uterus is also secondary sex organ, but it plays a very, very important role, crucial role. This is your uterus. Uterus is showing 3 layers. One is internal layer endometrium, middle layer myometrium, and outer layer serosa. So uterus shows 3 layers. From outside, serosa, myometrium, and endometrium. Right? Now, inside the uterus, there is a cavity called uterine cavity. And this uterine cavity is the place where the embryo develops. Embryo will develop. Okay, total development of the baby takes place in the uterine cavity. Okay, now this is the entrance of the uterus from vagina, and this portion is called cervix, and it enters into uterine cavity through a canal called cervical canal. I will show you the cervix region. You see here. If you view from this side, this is cervical canal, this is cervix. The sperm cells are deposited here and the semen is deposited here. The sperm cells start entering inside the cervical canal, and finally they go to ampullary ischemic junction, traveling via uterine cavity, and fertilization takes place. Okay, that's about your uterus. Uterus, the other name for uterus is womb. W-O-M-B, womb. It's highly muscular. Okay, right. So what is the role of uterus? It is the place where the embryonic development takes place. Now coming to the other portions, other parts. So now we have completed ovaries, fallopian tube, uterus. Next one is vagina and external genitalia. Now let us take vagina. Let us observe this vagina. This is the original photograph. Inside the vagina, there are number of folds called rugae. That shows that it is extensible, highly extensible. Understood? It can accommodate even a penis of bigger size. That's what. So yeah, it is having a lot of elastic property. Now, this vagina leads outside, opens outside through external genitalia. Now, what is the role of this vagina? Vagina plays role of receiving male copulatory organ penis during sexual intercourse, and vagina along with the cervical canal act as birth canal. That means through which the delivery of baby takes place. Okay, and the wall of the vagina is having some glands which are like bulbourethral glands of male, and they secrete some lubricants during sexual intercourse or coitus, so that the movement of penis can be facilitated easily for the deposition of semen. Okay, now coming to external genitalia, vagina opens out into external genitalia. This is external genitalia female, also known as vulva. Now this is the opening of the vagina. We call it as vaginal orifice. Just above it, there is a urinary orifice. If you go back to your picture, see, this is a urinary bladder, opens outside through urinary aperture, urethral orifice via urethra. So this passage is meant for excretion of urine only. It's no way concerned with any reproductive process. But here there is a separate opening for vagina, which is meant for the process of reproduction. So there are separate openings for vagina and urethra. So those openings can be seen here in the external genitalia vulva. This is vaginal orifice, this is urethral orifice above it. Just above the urethral orifice, there is a muscular organ called clitoris. See, on either side of this vaginal orifice and urethral orifice, there is a thin skin fold called labia minora, like doors. And this area where vagina and urethra opens, that is called vestibule. Okay? Now that vestibule is guarded by a thin skin fold called labia minora. Now, at the place where the two labia minora join, there is a muscular organ called clitoris, also known as glans. It is homologous to glans of penis of male. Right. Now what is the role of this clitoris? It is an erectile organ, just like the penis enlarges its size during sexual intercourse or coitus, clitoris also enlarges. And it gets stimulated during sexual intercourse, and the female reaches a state of pleasure called orgasm during the process of sexual intercourse. So that is the purpose of clitoris, to derive sexual pleasure. The organ is located here. Now, all these parts are covered externally by two thick skin folds called labia majora. So labia majora covers all these organs. And just back of this clitoris, there is an elevated fatty area that is called mons pubis. Okay. So this is about external genitalia female. But one thing here, most important thing to be mentioned here, the vagina, the vaginal orifice is partially covered by a thin layer called hymen. So the coverage of vaginal orifice is in such a way that a penis cannot be inserted in the vagina without rupture of hymen layer. So when the hymen layer is ruptured, slight bleeding may occur in some cases. So if the female is going to have the first sexual intercourse, there is a chance of rupture of this hymen, and there is a chance of slight bleeding. So it is general belief that if the female is having bleeding, that shows it is because of the rupture of hymen, and the hymen is intact. That means the female is virgin. If there is no such bleeding, if there is no rupture of hymen, that means the female is not virgin. This is a blind belief, I can say. Why? Because the hymen layer is very delicate. It can be ruptured even for if the female is participating in games and sports, swimming, cycling, running. There is a chance of rupture. So hymen cannot be considered as a symbol of virginity today. It's if you still think like that, it is a taboo, or it's a misconception. So you please wipe off all such feelings from your minds. Hymen is not the symbol of virginity. Right. This is about external genitalia. So external genitalia, vagina, then uterus, right, fallopian tube, all these come under secondary sex organs, whereas ovary come under primary sex organ. What is the role of the secondary sex organs? Transport here. Okay, ovary produce ovum, that's all. What about other secondary sex organs? They do transport of ovum. Then fertilization, then development of embryo, then delivery of the baby through vagina. That's why it is called birth canal. Okay. Then after delivery, feeding the baby. Okay. So totally 6 functions the female reproductive organs have to perform. But here, who will feed the baby? Do all these organs feed the baby? No. For that, there is another organ called breast in female. Let us see that also. Now, you see here, this is breast. Now, we have a pair of mammary glands located in breast. Now, you see, if you take the structure of the breast, okay, it's composed of many follicular cells which secrete milk at the time of delivery and ready with the milk to feed the young one. Now, inside the breast, you can see there are many follicular cells. From each follicular cell, some mammary tubule will arise. So, from follicular cells, mammary tubules. All the mammary tubules join to form mammary ducts. All again different mammary ducts join to form ampulla. From ampulla, lactiferous ducts will come. You see here. So these are all mammary tubules, mammary ducts, and this is a ampulla. Here ampulla, and ampulla open out through lactiferous ducts, and all the lactiferous duct open into a small protuberance called a nipple. This is the nipple. Now you see all the lactiferous ducts are opened through nipple, and around the nipple there is a dark skin. The skin becomes dark. We call that area as areola. So when the baby starts sucking this nipple, all the milk which is secreted by this mammary gland start coming out and enter into the mouth of the baby. Like that, mammary glands present in the breast feed the baby immediately after birth. So this is another function the female reproductive organs carry out. So this is also a secondary sex organ. Okay, only ovary is the primary sex organ. Now, what we learn from this, the female reproductive organs are performing totally 6 functions. Production of gametes by ovary, then all remaining 5, transport of gametes, fertilization, development of the embryo, then delivery, then feeding the baby. All these 5 functions plus production. Production of gametes taken by primary sex organ. All these 5 functions are taken by secondary sex organ. You see how nicely the female reproductive system is designed to perform all these 6 functions. Right? So, finally I can conclude that any organ system is designed to perform some specific functions. Okay, is it clear? Thank you.